what a sample class would kind of look like. This will be again posted on an unlisted video, as an unlisted video on YouTube, so you guys will be able to access this from your phones, laptops, etc. And so this is actually just a screenshot of my screen, and so God's graced us with a way to record some audio over it. And so what I want to do is walk you through the class, give you some extra notes. What would come with every class would be two things. There would be a worksheet to be completed with basically the verses, the scriptures that are through the lesson, so that you can really look at this for yourself. And the second thing is that they will come with some assignments at the end. Again, this is still part A of, the three-part basically, first part of the three-part basically of our training. So this is part of the knowledge piece, and I just think it will make it convenient. So let me show you what it would be like. So obviously, today we're looking at the pathway of what is the gospel. We're starting there. It's one of the first competencies, which is biblical and gospel clarity. That's important. And so we're going to dive into why do we need to understand it to lead others in worship. In 1 Corinthians 15:3-4, Paul breaks down something extremely important in this exact verse right here. He says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scriptures." So a few things I want to highlight here. Number one, Paul delivered this message, this gospel, and said that it was of first importance. And what I loved about this is that he's not just talking about a first importance in this moment. He didn't say of first importance to the non-believer, but he's talking to Christians here. He's talking to believers, saying this message right here, this gospel message, this good news is of first importance. And the second thing he says, that Christ died for our sins, that he was buried and raised on the third day. And that pretty much is like at the core of the gospel. In essence, the gospel is the good news, which more clearly said is Christ's work in his life, death, and resurrection on our behalf to literally remove sin and reconcile us and redeem us back to the Father, right? To the glory of his name. And so that's pretty much the heart of what the gospel is. But the third thing that's also very important here, and I don't want it to slip under your radar, is that it says that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried and he was raised in the third day in accordance with the scriptures. What he's basically saying is that there is a connection between this good news and the scriptures. In other words, the scriptures pretty much authenticated that the point of the scriptures was the gospel. The point of the scriptures was to point us to Jesus, his work, his life, death, and resurrection. In other words, the gospel is not just one of the themes, it is the overarching story of what the scriptures is actually about. And so why do we need the gospel? Here are a few reasons. We need the gospel, and this is not exhaustive, of course, but for our purposes, these I think are the four main reasons why we need to understand as worship leaders the gospel. Number one, it is the story of God. God is the gospel. God is the good news. In other words, God giving us himself is good news to a sinful, broken, rebellious humanity, a humanity that did not deserve God. Him offering himself, coming down and dying on our behalf is a gift. So the gospel is amazing news because it's the story of God. It's the story of how God came and redeemed us. Number two, it's the reason we gather as a church, right? And as a body. 1 Corinthians 12:27. Please take a look at that. And of course, look through your worksheets because that's one of the questions that's in there. Number three, the reason we can sing in the midst of suffering is because of the gospel. The gospel promises us that God will be with us now and that there will be a day. This is a part of the good news. It's a part of the package of our salvation where no one will cry any tears. Well, nobody would have any more fears. There will be no more war. There will be no more starvation. Everything will be perfect. Only the gospel can make that accessible to us. And we can sing in the midst of suffering because he's present with us now and because he will one day redeem us and we will be in endless never-ending joy. Number four, Jesus is the only way we can enter into his presence boldly in spite of our imperfections. He's the only way. Ephesians 3:12 makes it clear. Hebrews 10:19 speaks of his blood as being the only way we can enter. You need this, and we're going to dive into why, because there are two particular aspects in the life of every worship leader that usually gets mixed up, and that's identity and character. And without the gospel, we will not have a grip neither on our identity or the gospel. Worship leaders need to resist the temptation of thinking that the gospel applies only to our salvation, as though it is a starter kit to Christianity. It is our life. It is the story of our life with God at the center forever. In him we live and move and have our being. And that's Acts 17:28. And so what we're saying is that the gospel is not a part of our Christian life. The gospel is the whole of the Christian life. And the truth is, you spend the rest of your life unpacking. You spend the rest of your life seeing the value, the beauty of what has been offered to us in the gospel, which is God himself. And so you might have already been living in the gospel, enjoying grace, enjoying God, and never really knew it. Well, I'm here to let you know that when we use the word the gospel, what we're saying is we want to be Christ-centered. We want to be Christ-focused. We want to see that God is not a part of our life story, but rather we are a part of God's overarching story. And so that kind of elevates God's glory to a new place, and it also elevates our joy to a brand new place. Well, guys, I'm gonna leave it right there. We're gonna dive into how the gospel forms our character and shapes our identity ASAP. So please, I'm sending this video out to you just as a sample. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. And if you think you can actually do this at home like this with a worksheet where you can pause or rewind, write down questions, send them in, and we can communicate that way, I think it would be an awesome thing. I love meeting with you guys in person, but the truth is I understand how busy your schedule is. So please give me some feedback.